Welcome to the Ramps on the Moon podcast. I'm Michèle Taylor, Director for Change, and this is my opportunity, with my guests, to open up the conversation about disability equality in the arts and cultural industries and talk through what needs to happen. Welcome to this edition of the Ramps on the Moon podcast. We're here in the New Wolsey Theatre in the Glass Box, and there's a show getting in today. So if you hear some bangs and scratches and bells and whistles, it's Around the World in 80 Days getting into the main auditorium. So looking forward to that later. I'm here with Clare Hammerton. Morning, Clare.
Morning.
Clare was our external evaluator for Ramps on the Moon, and we'll be talking about that further on in the podcast. But before we do, let me give you an audio description of myself today. I'm still a white older woman with short grey spiky hair. I'm wearing round red reading glasses, and I'm wearing a white top and a cream cardigan. Clare.
Hello. Well, I'm a middle-aged woman, white, short brownish hair, and I'm wearing a stripy top today, black and white.
And it's really nice to be with you. And it's really good to talk about evaluation because I love evaluation. A lot of people don't, but I really do. I'm very committed, I would say, to evaluation. So, Clare, why do you think evaluation is important?
Well, I think that we both, Michèle, have had these conversations quite a lot around the impact of evaluation. And it's not just an end result to catch kind of the data at the end of a project. It's an ongoing process that you actually present the data that you're gathering or the information that you're gathering throughout the whole of the evaluation to then trigger conversations throughout the whole time that you're capturing that data and presenting and talking about that data or that information. So it contributes to the process of change or the impact that the project is, wanting to actually achieve as well.
And is that, to use some buzzwords, are you talking about formative evaluation and summative evaluation?
You've got me there.
Okay. So the way I understand it, and the words don't matter really because you've just explained it brilliantly, I think, but formative evaluation is just that, when you're evaluating as you go along in order to effect the work that you're doing. So you're learning as you're going along. Whereas summative evaluation is that thing of, well, let's just gather the data. And then at the end, you look at the data and you look at the story that the data tells. And the only reason I want to bring that out is because I think in the context of Ramps on the Moon, what's interesting is because Ramps is all about what we're learning, then that ongoing formative evaluation is what's really important. Can you think of an example of a piece of evaluation that you've done in Ramps or elsewhere that has had an impact on the work that's being delivered? So when the work has responded to the data that the evaluation has yielded?
I think that when you are not the only person who's doing the evaluation, and when you're not the only person who's presenting the evaluation. So as an evaluator, you're a facilitator of all of the pieces of information. So it's presented by, say, a group of people who are involved in the project, rather than yourself as this person who's named as the evaluator. So, for example, if you get a group of, this is not connected to Ramps, if you bring together a group of carers of people and they have a voice in actually talking about the data that you've gathered around a certain project, then basically you have much more impact both on those carers and on the services than if you're gathering data and then you present it as a person in yourself. So I think it's like a wider, if you look at evaluation through an empowerment and participatory lens, rather than an extraction of information to actually present for funders or for, at the end. So it's really effective if every action that you take is through a lens of participation and empowerment, rather than a lens of gathering the data for the project's sake or for the funder's sake.
That's really fascinating and really clear. So what that immediately says to me as well is that evaluation is not something that is done to you. It's something that actually becomes part of the project, part of the work.
Absolutely.
That's really fascinating. And we've used the word data a lot. And I'm aware that whenever I think of the word data, I immediately start thinking about numbers. And actually, that's not the entirety. So what are you talking about?
So data I'm talking about is in those terms of qualitative and quantitative data. So I just explain those. Qualitative is like the conversations that you have with people or the information you gain that is not number based. Quantitative is number based. So you can have numbers like, for example, in relation to ramps, there was audience surveys. So how many people came to see the ramps productions? How many people of those were identified as disabled? How many were carers, etc.? So you can actually look at the numbers and identify how many people have come to the show. But if you ask those people questions about how they found the show, how they were introduced, how they were given a touch tour, then you get the qualitative data around how they felt about the show, what it gave them. So you evaluate their conversations, the conversations that you've had with them. And that can either be through, an online survey, it can be face-to-face. And that's the whole point of evaluation as well, is you have to actually devise the systems of gaining that knowledge, gaining that data that is right for the person. So you have to go at the right time. You have to have the right language. You have to have the right approach to actually gain the data from people, because it's quite difficult to gain data, to be honest. People don't have the time to respond, and you have to encourage them to do that in a trusted environment as well. So there's confidence that whatever they say is kept in that environment if they don't want it shared, or their identities are not revealed if they don't want that to happen as well.
And there's nothing quite so guaranteed to spoil your evening, is there, as having a great evening at the theatre and then, can you just fill in this questionnaire for me? It really does potentially spoil an evening, doesn't it? So how can you do it if you don't do it that way? How do you, because I'm aware that we're talking now about capturing data rather than the empowerment and participation model. But sometimes you do need to just capture the data, don't you? So what are the ways in which you can do that don't feel like a real dampener on a fantastically joyful creative experience you've just had?
I mean, this is just one space of capturing the data or the information from people. So if we're talking about ramps, we have the information from all of the theatres that were involved. We have the information from the people who were involved in the production specifically, but then it also went on tour. So it impacted, just having the ramps production touring impacted on all of those staff, be they freelance or employed staff in all of those theatres. So you have them. You have on all of the actors that are involved or the creatives who are involved in the production, the impact. This trickles out. Then you also have, as we've talked about, the quantitative kind of data. And then as well, you have the impact on audiences, so the public. And that actually goes wider with the ramps partners because they actually take conversations around disability out into the wider community to attract people who would not necessarily come to the theatre to actually come to a ramps show, which potentially hopefully has captioning, has BSL, has, audio description. So all of those is like these ripples out to wider communities and ripples from the impact of ramps, which goes further and further. So someone who's involved in a ramps production basically is going to go to another production and talk about their experiences of being involved in an integrated production as well. So it's like, how do you capture
That's just what I was
entirety?
thinking. It sounds like it's like herding cats. How can you capture all of that stuff?
I think you need to realise that you can't capture every single nuance from every single person and every single impact. So you have to have obviously a evaluation plan that says that we're going to speak to, let's say 100 people, more than 100, but 100 people who come and see a show. Then we're going to, over the course of the run of that show, we're going to speak to 5 or 10 people. You're not going to speak to all audience members. So it's whether they're audience members that going back to your initial question, it's audience members that you have a connection with because you've already spoken to them and you ask them whether you can. It's whether you do it online and, have a slip of paper when they sit down to say, can you fill in this online? And you'll only have a percentage of people who do that. And it's usually the percentage of people who've had a really good experience or a really bad experience. The middle ground is you can't really rely on that data really, but you can take a lot of information from people's views. So, maybe it's you have a focus group of people that you hold specifically and you invite them along and you have teas and coffees and you tell them how their voice is going to contribute to the project as well.
And I guess that's really motivating because if you just say, we'd like to know what you think, that's possibly going to be attractive to a few people. But if you say, we want to know what you think, and then what we're going to do with it is this, and this is how, as you've just put it, your voice will be important, then that's much more motivating, isn't it?
What's really important is that RAMPS is specifically focused on people who are disabled. And so audience members who are disabled, where there's a production that actually enables them to experience the production is really important. So it's kind of like talking with them talking about that access or that space for them is really going to be motivating for them to come in and give their voice. And so it's captured.
And you then obviously, of course, need to be really rigorous to make sure that you're asking in a way that they can respond to. So
absolutely,
that there are no barriers.
Absolutely. And there are barriers. There are always barriers. You want to get it as right as possible, but I think you also need to understand and accept and create the space that you can make mistakes and you will make mistakes, because it won't be right for everyone all of the time. That's the process of RAMPS as well, is to learn, to continually learn and make mistakes, not continuously make mistakes. That's not what I meant, but, to kind of try, put yourself, it is uncomfortable sometimes to put yourself in that position, but as long as you respond appropriately and people feel that they're in a safe space to actually provide their views and their perspectives and they're understood and listened to, then that's the kind of process of going forward in the evaluation and in RAMPS as well.
I'm really struck by how often you've talked about safety and people feeling safe. And it seems to me that you're implying that trust is really important in evaluation. Is that right?
Trust is hugely important in evaluation because, there will be instances where people speak to you and they do want to tell you about circumstances for themselves, but they don't want to be named and blamed and kind of feel that there's any response for themselves for saying what they've said. So it's a matter of actually capturing that experience of people and presenting them in a way that they are listened to and reacted upon and structures are changed. That's the whole point of evaluation, is to feed into a process of change.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can understand what is being said, what are people's experiences, and then react to that. It's important for that knowledge to be shared, but people don't specifically want that knowledge to be associated with them because it will potentially change the way that they're treated or reacted to.
Yeah.
They also need to be in a trusted space to take the evaluation out of that and to create organisational cultures where they can raise their experiences. That's the whole process of ramps as well, is to enable organisations to become even beyond disability aware, so that people can continuously have safe spaces and to make challenges around their experiences in relation to the structure of the organisation and the way productions are made, the way that they're actually, within the productions and the rehearsal processes and etc. So it's like that needs to be created first for the evaluation so that people start to talk. And when they're talking to you in an evaluation space that is trusted, it's a continual process of them formulating their perspective as well. So there's something happening within the evaluation that's more than information being shared with a trusted person. It's like it's a space where they're formulating how they feel, whether they should raise this as a point, whether there's a trusted space for them to raise this issue, if it's an issue, as a point, or a positive experience as well. And that's why within valuation it's quite important to have group discussions as well, because then it's like a process of people sharing in a trusted space around their experiences, but also around their negative experiences and also around their positive experiences. So it's a space that kind of brings it forward and also might raise some issues that really need to be addressed, externally as well, or in organisations.
And I love that. I love the way that you've so clearly joined trust, change and evaluation. And it seems to me that in some ways that cluster of qualities or endeavours or whatever you want to call them, those qualities and that cluster of qualities, which is greater than the sum of the parts, is exactly at the heart of what RAMPS is. So I really love the way you've articulated that. And I really also love the way you've articulated really clearly that evaluation is part of the work. It's not something you bolt on afterwards. And my head is going into the place where we have talked so much about embedded access and how the access tools, as they're called, like captioning, sign language, audio description, you embed those in the creative vision of a piece rather than bolting them on. And in the same way, I suppose, I'm getting this picture of evaluation as being creatively embedded from the beginning.
Yes. Now, there is a problem in there, in that embedded kind of point of evaluation. And the problem is, it's probably not the right word, but it needs to be so connected, because if you, for example, hold a focus group with people talking with you about things that are really impacting upon them.
Yeah.
And as an evaluator, you don't have the space to pass that on in the best way, And then if it's not reacted to, or shown to be understood, then the people who are in the focus group with you will feel despondent about giving you their time, giving you their experiences. Yeah. They will feel like it's not been worth it for me.
Yeah.
It has to be involved, part of a whole process, the evaluation. Otherwise it becomes tokenistic, really.
And then you lose trust. And then you get into a downward spiral and people potentially feel exposed. And as you say, despondent is such a good word. So it has to be meaningful, and actually managing expectations becomes really, really important. So I've gathered you together as a group. Thank you for coming. Here's your cup of tea and your biscuit. And this is what could potentially happen with the things that we talk about today, so that you don't set up expectations that, well, if I say this doesn't work and it would work better another way, you're going to change it. But also, why bother asking if you're not going to do something meaningful with it? And there is an answer to that question, I think, which is, well, because the funders asked you to. The funders said that you've got to report on it. And I think, and I'd love to know what you think of this, Claire, but I think that evaluation does best when we tether it, how can I put this? When we tether it to the beginning of a project and embed it there, rather than tethering it to a report that's going to come at the end.
I mean, it's most definitely about a process of change, or, your evaluation plan could look at a theory of change, which is, I know that you have done that with ramps. And a theory of change is around the very small incremental changes that can be observed that are happening, ongoing. And so we were talking about expectations of what's going to come out of a focus group, for example. And everything cannot be transformative and impactful, So from say, for example, a focus group, if that's captured and that's presented back, and RAMPS is a really complicated project in the sense of there's all the partners, there's the theatres, there's the wider theatre sector, there's all the communities involved, there's the individual actors, creatives, as we've explained before. It's very complicated. And change or impact might not happen immediately. It might be cumulative, trickles. So as long as you're really clear with the people in that project group that in relation to what I can do as an evaluator is I can formulate this and I can write it down and I can present it. But that is all that I can do in this environment. And it's up to the people who are involved in ramps to pick it up, read it, and respond to it. And they might not respond just on the basis of this piece of writing or this presentation or this report. They might respond based on 5 of these reports. So it might be 5 years later. But it definitely contributes to it. And this is the role that I will play as an evaluator. So to hold that trust with the people in the focus group. However, it still might have an impact on them if they're in the middle of a production and then their needs and experiences are not being visibly responded to immediately. So they still might become, it still might impact on them. It might give them a feeling of despondency if it's not reacted to immediately. But, so it's kind of a catch-22 position when you open it up and then you have to explain to people, your breadth of impact, and you can't have a wider impact in such a complicated project. You've got to rely on the structures of the project that will take it forward, whatever you're going to deliver.
Yeah. That's also another aspect of trust, isn't it? As a contributor, as a partner in your evaluation, as you put it a few minutes ago, I have to trust, or you demonstrate to me that I can trust that that something that I say to you may not have immediate impact, but that it will go somewhere. You are going to report it so that it will go somewhere. And so it might be just a little one ingredient in a whole swathe of ingredients that are actually going to lead to the change.
I mean, the complicated aspect of what RAMPS is seeking to achieve is to alter structures of productions and organizations and mainstream rights throughout kind of organizations and sectors.
Mainstream rights. That's a big phrase.
Yeah, it's a huge phrase. I knew I was going to throw it out there, but I didn't really want to.
You can't throw it out there without talking about it a bit, Claire. Mainstreaming rights. What's that?
Wow. So it's disability rights.
Uh-huh.
So in the sense of RAMPS is around taking the rights of people who are disabled and ensuring that they're addressed, understood, integrated into all actions of the theatres and the productions in the same way as people who don't have or aren't disabled, as it were. I think we're going to get quite complicated here,
But it's not complicated, is it? It's actually really simple, isn't it? Because it's saying we're back to concepts like equality impact assessments and stuff like that. It's about you just as a matter of course of what your mainstream way of doing things is, because after all, that's all the mainstream means, really. You are taking seriously the rights of disabled people. I think it's kind of, I mean, it then gets complicated in terms of how you implement it.
But so first of all, you need a focus on the rights of disabled people. And then what you need to do is lose that focus because it becomes mainstreamed into the whole structure.
So is that a bit like transforming conscious competence into unconscious competence?
Yes, exactly. And in that, what you create, which is a critical mass of people who undertake this perspective. If you internally mainstream this concept of the rights of people, then it's an internal mainstreaming within the knowledge of people, the skills of people to actually, put on a production that is right for all people who are involved in that production. So you have the knowledge, the skills. It's these structures of the organizations, such as the casting processes, all of those structures, as well as accessibility, which is the thing that is foremost in everyone's mind, but it's really, just another component of that whole process of mainstreaming rights, as it were. And there's a couple of key components in that mainstreaming process. The first is the safe space to talk about challenges to disability rights or, to make it right for people who have been made disabled or are disabled. The second kind of component of that is creating an organizational culture that would just take over with a critical mass. And you'll expect those challenges.
So that's where you lose the focus.
You lose the focus. You just, it becomes a revolving kind of status of itself that keeps perpetuating itself.
I think that's such a useful concept.
It's such a useful concept, but so difficult to capture in an evaluation.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How do you tell that story? Because that's all evaluation is, isn't it? In the end, it's telling the story of what you did, who did it, what happened, what you do differently next time. It's telling the story. So how within the sorts of time frames that we're used to working within around funding cycles and things. How do you tell that story of mainstreaming rights? How do you get the data to enable you to tell that story?
I think we go back to the place where we started. Mm-hmm. It's like you have very different kind of pieces of data, qualitative and quantitative. And my experiences of evaluating ramps is that you can have the same conversations with the same people in the same roles, and you can have the same outcomes in relation to the number of audience members or the number of productions, but there's differences in there. Mm-hmm. And it's about analysing those conversations to bring out the story that is behind the feelings of the people who you're having conversations with. Because they're telling you about their experiences, their needs, but also their feelings. Yeah. And so the experiences can be the same in the sense of, you're in a rehearsal room for this amount of time, or the structure around it can be the same, but there's something different in the feeling of people in the room that creates, a process that's going really fast forward, and everyone's in a trusted environment, or it's a bit more sticky and it's not really working that well. Yeah. And I mean, that's not to say that the evaluation, whatever the evaluation captures, it's not going to enable both of those two scenarios to go forward, and one which is a bit more sticky might go a bit more further forward anyway. So it's not a judgment. It's a reality of the people in that room, and it's about capturing their experiences and their feelings.
No, it's really fascinating, really interesting. And talking of things being sticky, what are the things that can go wrong in evaluation? What are the pitfalls? What are the things that, particularly perhaps within the arts and culture and even within ramps? I mean, what are the things that we get wrong about actually conducting an evaluation?
I mean, we've talked about the whole integration of evaluation into the whole process right from the very start. So, I mean, that's a huge pitfall that can occur.
And I think it's a wasted opportunity too, because I think at the beginning, evaluation, if you've got evaluation in mind, it's a helpful planning tool, isn't it?
Well, maybe it's in the word evaluation.
Maybe it is.
Maybe if you call it a theory of change and you capture the information from that theory of change, then you kind of, you don't think of it as evaluating the impact of the project or there's also something in relation to evaluating the worth of the spend.
Yeah.
Which is what we all have to do because, it's public funds, isn't it?
It can be so reductive though.
Yeah. But I think it's important though. It's an important thing to actually identify some of the impact that maybe over time has happened in relation to this much spend. But it's a very minute aspect of the evaluation, or it should be.
And I suppose within what you've just said, and my comment about it being reductive, I'm making an assumption that if you do a kind of cost per participant analysis, which is often where we get to in the end with that kind of analysis, then actually to know the figure isn't necessarily saying, well, that's too much, or it's just saying, well, okay, so that's how much this intervention cost, and it's still worth it.
Yeah. I mean, like we talked about, you can't actually know what the impact of this intervention is, because it just ripples out so far.
Which is why it seems reductive to me.
Yeah.
So there's way more to it than that, which is what we've been talking about, I guess. But what are some of the other pitfalls, the traps that we fall into? We being the cultural sector.
I mean, I don't think we've spoken about this as well. I don't think we as ramps have captured enough of the impact on cases, on people. Mm-hmm. What has been involved in ramps enabled for people further down the line in the future in relation to their careers, as it were.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You say perhaps it's the word, and I think you say evaluation to some people, and immediately the image is the person with the clipboard in the corner.
You could actually employ someone full-time.
To evaluate.
Mm-hmm. If it is part of the process of change. But what we do is we allocate a certain percentage of the budget for 3 days a month to evaluate.
Yeah.
And that's not enough time to integrate evaluation through the whole process of change, especially when it's such a complicated project spanning the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
With, all of the different structures of the organisations and a touring production.
Yeah.
I've said it a couple of times already, but I would say that's a big pitfall, is not understanding the impact of evaluation if you want to feed into it.
Final question from me, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned from being involved in the evaluation of ramps on the moon?
I have learnt so much. No, I have. For me, it's incredible to learn about the art sector personally.
Because that's not in your background, is it?
No, not at all. And how it works and how it's structured. But also to delve more into the process of evolving rights and some of the components or parts of ramps that are really, really interesting, such as the Agents for Change, the leadership team across organisations that have autonomy and function differently, the impact of productions and touring productions, and, just marvelling at the impact of ramps across its, the span of its years and how that can never be taken away. So the actual project of ramps has created a whole process of change with so many people across the sector. So seeing that and observing that and capturing that and sharing that has been really, and it also, for me, who is I work on kind of the mainstreaming of rights with different people with different identities. It's really fed into my knowledge around the components and the processes of mainstreaming rights. So I'm really grateful to have been involved with ramps and to have seen some amazing shows as well. It's been great.
Well, we're really grateful for your input and all the work that you've done over the last 3.5 years that you've been involved with Ramps on the Moon. So thank you for that. And thank you for being my guest this morning on the Ramps on the Moon podcast. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thanks very much, Michèle. It's great to see you again.
And you. Thank you for listening. You can contact me through the link in the show notes or through our website, rampsonthemoon.co.uk. Ramps on the Moon is funded by Arts Council England and is made up of 6 mainstream theatres: Birmingham Rep, Leeds Playhouse, Nottingham Playhouse, the New Wolsey Theatre in Ipswich, Sheffield Theatres and Theatre Royal Stratford East, and our associates, Wiltshire Creative and the Regional Theatre Young Director Scheme. This podcast is the copyright of Ramps on the Moon. Ramps on the Moon cannot be held responsible for any mistakes or omissions. This podcast is made for entertainment purposes. And finally, we'd like to thank our friends at podtalk.co.uk for producing this podcast.